Okay, so now that all of our depth passes has finished rendering, let's open up our folder and take a look at those passes being rendered out. So inside our renders folder, inside all of our shots folders is going to be that depth folder we created, and inside each of those folders is going to be all of our frames for our depth passes. So for shot 1, shot 2, and so on. And we can come over into Houdini, we can load up mplay, and we can load some of these depth passes in and take a look at what they look like. So I'm going to jump into our renders folder, into shot 1, and grab shot 1's depth pass, and load that in. We'll notice we've got our color plane. We also now have our position Z plane, which is the variable that we rendered out for depth, and we can see that we've got lower values closer to the camera, darker values being a lower value, and we've got higher values further away from the camera, because logically that makes sense. These guys are closer to the camera, and this distance is getting greater and greater and greater as we go further away from the camera. So if we play this, we can see our scene. Wow, that cached really quickly. So we turn on real time, we can see our scene, and we can see our scene in terms of depth away from the camera, with these back benches being further away and thus having a greater depth value than the front benches. So I'm going to open up the depth pass for shot 3 as well, just to show that pass. So let's open up the depth for shot 3 and get mplay to recook. Make sure we are indeed looking at the position Z channel, and then we can play this back. So you can see our character, as he gets further away from the camera, is getting a higher depth value. Our audience has a much higher depth value than our character in the diving board, and we'll talk a little bit in a minute about the fact that it's this floating point. Because if this wasn't floating point, this would be pure white. The fact of the matter is we're actually dealing with floating point data, so we have more information than is actually being displayed to the screen. And we can change our brightness and our contrast values to expose this. That's probably too much of a change. There we go. So we can actually shift through those values and see we still have differentiation between the back of the audience and the front of the audience, and also with our character in the ladder. It's just that mplay has tried to choose the range that's going to give us the largest contrast between large depths and close depths, but these values aren't fixed in the actual plane. It's just a way of turning that floating point data into something that can be displayed on a monitor. And you'll notice that when we go over into compositing and we start working with the depth information, the fact that we have the floating point information is going to make it very easy to fully control how we wish our depth of field and things like depth darken to work. So that's going to wrap up the rendering of our depth passes, and that actually wraps up all of our rendering. We've got all of our render script completed, we've got all of our passes rendered out, and so now we can actually move on to getting everything composited back together. So thanks a lot.